The Gospels of Matthew and Luke give us some fascinating details about the birth of Jesus, but they don't spell out the exact date. Instead, we get a few key pieces of information that, when we put them together, might help us zero in on the season or even the month of Christ's birth. First, let's talk about the shepherds. Luke tells us that when Jesus was born, shepherds were living out in the fields nearby, keeping watch over their flocks at night. Now, here's the interesting part: shepherds typically kept their flocks in the fields from spring through early autumn. During the winter months, it was too cold, and they would bring their flocks into sheltered areas. So, the fact that the shepherds were in the field suggests that Jesus was likely born sometime between late March and early October. This gives us a big clue that December 25th might not be the actual date. Next, let's look at the journey of Mary and Joseph to Bethlehem. Luke mentions that a decree went out from Caesar Augustus that all the world should be taxed, which required people to return to their ancestral homes. Now, think about it: would the Roman authorities really demand that everyone travel long distances in the dead of winter? It's unlikely. The census and taxation were probably scheduled for a time when travel was easier, likely in the warmer months of spring or summer. But there's more. Some scholars point out that the timing of Jesus' birth might align with the Jewish calendar. Luke mentions that when Mary conceived Jesus, her relative Elizabeth was in her 6th month of pregnancy. Elizabeth's husband, Zechariah, was serving as a priest in the temple when an angel appeared to him. Zechariah belonged to the priestly division of Abijah, which served in the temple around June. If Elizabeth conceived shortly after, then Jesus' conception in Mary could have happened in late December. This would place his birth around late September, possibly during the Jewish festival of Sukkot, the Feast of Tabernacles. Sukkot is a time when Jews commemorate their ancestors living in temporary shelters in the wilderness. Some scholars see a symbolic connection here, suggesting that Jesus, whose name Emmanuel means God with us, might have been born during this festival, emphasizing the idea of God dwelling among his people. So, when we piece together these clues from the Bible, the shepherds in the fields, the timing of the Roman census, and the potential alignment with Jewish festivals, we get a pretty strong case that Jesus was likely born in the early autumn, not in the winter. This challenges the traditional December 25th date and opens up a whole new understanding of the Nativity story. Now that we've explored the biblical clues pointing to the timing of Jesus' birth, let's dig deeper into the historical context, the Roman census that brought Mary and Joseph to Bethlehem. The Gospel of Luke mentions that Jesus was born during a census ordered by Caesar Augustus. This census required everyone to return to their ancestral towns, which is why Joseph and Mary made the trek from Nazareth to Bethlehem. But here's where things get interesting. Historians have debated the exact timing of this census for centuries. Most historians agree that the Romans were meticulous record keepers, and censuses were a big deal. They were usually conducted for tax purposes, ensuring that everyone in the empire was accounted for and paying their dues. Now, if we consider the logistics of such a massive event, it's unlikely that the Roman authorities would have ordered people to travel during the harsh winter months. Travel was already difficult and dangerous enough without adding winter weather into the mix. Moreover, historical records suggest that Roman censuses often coincided with the agricultural calendar, typically after the harvest when people were more likely to have the means to pay their taxes. This timing would align with late summer or early autumn, exactly the time we're already considering based on the shepherds in the fields and the possible alignment with Jewish festivals. But let's take it a step further. Luke also tells us that this census was conducted while Quirinius was governing Syria. This is a crucial detail because Quirinius's governorship has been well documented. The challenge here is that Quirinius officially became governor in AD 6, which seems too late for Jesus' birth. However, some scholars suggest that Quirinius might have had an earlier role in the region, possibly overseeing a local census before his official governorship. This earlier census would fit into the timeline we're building. So, when we connect the dots, Luke's mention of the census, the Roman practice of timing censuses with the agricultural calendar, and the likely earlier role of Quirinius, we start to see a pattern. The historical evidence seems to support the idea that Jesus was born during a time that makes sense for both the Roman authorities and the Jewish population. Continuing our exploration, let's turn our attention to one of the most iconic elements of the Nativity story, the Star of Bethlehem. This mysterious star that guided the wise men to Jesus has sparked countless theories over the years. But could it also hold the key to pinpointing the time of his birth? First, let's get one thing straight: this wasn't just any star. The Gospel of Matthew describes it as something extraordinary, something so significant that it led the wise men, or magi, on a journey from the east to find the newborn king. What kind of astronomical event could have caused such a stir? Astronomers and historians have proposed several possibilities, each more intriguing than the last. One popular theory suggests that the Star of Bethlehem could have been a rare conjunction of planets. In ancient times, a conjunction, where two or more planets appear very close together in the sky, was seen as a powerful omen. In the year 7 BC, there was a particularly striking conjunction of Jupiter and Saturn in the constellation Pisces, a combination that would have been visible in the eastern sky and might have caught the attention of the Magi. But there's another possibility: a comet. Ancient Chinese records mention a bright comet that appeared around 5 BC, which could have been visible for several weeks. Comets were often interpreted as heralds of significant events, especially the birth of a great leader. Could this have been the Star of Bethlehem? It's a theory that fits well with the timing we've been discussing. And then there's the supernova hypothesis. Some scholars suggest that the star could have been an exploding star, a supernova, which would have been visible as a new, bright object in the night sky. This event would have been awe-inspiring and certainly worthy of leading the Magi on their journey. The timing of these astronomical events aligns closely with the late summer or early autumn period we've been exploring. If the Star of Bethlehem was indeed a planetary conjunction, a comet, or even a supernova, it likely appeared during this time frame, further supporting the idea that Jesus was born in that season. As we continue our journey through the clues that could reveal the true date of Christ's birth, let's take a closer look at the Jewish festivals. These festivals are not just important cultural events, they are deeply symbolic, often tied to the agricultural calendar and significant moments in Jewish history. The Gospel accounts are filled with references to Jewish customs and traditions. Jesus himself was born into a Jewish family and lived according to Jewish law. So, it's not surprising that his birth might coincide with one of the major Jewish festivals, each of which carried profound religious significance. One of the most compelling theories is that Jesus was born during the Feast of Tabernacles, or Sukkot. Sukkot is a 7-day festival that usually falls in late September or early October, aligning perfectly with the time frame we've been discussing. During Sukkot, Jews commemorate their ancestors' time in the wilderness by living in temporary shelters called sukkahs. These huts symbolize God's protection and presence with his people during their journey through the desert. It's a festival of joy and thanksgiving, celebrating God dwelling among his people. Now, let's connect the dots. The name Emmanuel, given to Jesus, means God with us. If Jesus was born during Sukkot, it would be a powerful symbol of God literally dwelling among his people in the person of Christ. The temporary shelters of Sukkot could reflect the humble circumstances of Jesus' birth, laid in a manger, a temporary, humble shelter. This connection adds a rich layer of meaning to the Nativity story, one that would resonate deeply with Jewish believers of the time. But Sukkot isn't the only festival worth considering. Some scholars have also suggested that Jesus could have been born during Passover, or even the Feast of Dedication, known as Hanukkah. Passover, which occurs in the spring, celebrates the liberation of the Israelites from Egypt, while Hanukkah, in December, commemorates the rededication of the Second Temple in Jerusalem. Both festivals carry themes of deliverance, light, and new beginnings, ideas that align closely with the message of Christ's birth. However, the Sukkot theory stands out because of its timing and its themes of God's presence and protection. It fits seamlessly with the idea of Jesus as Emmanuel, God with us, born not in a palace but in a humble setting, much like the temporary shelters of Sukkot. First off, it's important to know that the earliest Christians didn't focus on celebrating Jesus' birth at all. Their primary concern was Easter, the celebration of his resurrection. The exact date of Jesus' birth wasn't a major issue for the early church, which is why the New Testament doesn't provide a specific date. However, as Christianity spread and became more organized, church leaders began to pay more attention to the timing of significant events in Jesus' life. By the 4th century, December 25th had become the official date to celebrate Christ's birth. But how did they arrive at this date? There are a couple of theories. One of the most common explanations is that December 25th was chosen to coincide with the Roman festival of Sol Invictus, the unconquered sun, which was celebrated around the winter solstice. This was a time when Romans honored the sun god, and it marked the return of longer days after the darkest time of the year. By placing Christmas on this date, early Christians could symbolically connect the birth of Jesus, the light of the world, with the victory of light over darkness. But there's another theory, one rooted in early Christian thought rather than a reaction to pagan traditions. Some church fathers believed that Jesus was conceived on March 25th, the same date they believed the world was created and the date of his crucifixion. If you count 9 months from March 25th, you get December 25th as the birth date. This theory, known as the integral age concept, reflects the idea that great prophets lived an exact number of years from conception to death. What's fascinating here is how different Christian communities initially celebrated Christ's birth on different dates. In the Eastern Church, January 6th, now known as Epiphany, was originally the date to celebrate both Jesus' birth and his baptism. Over time, however, the Western Church's December 25th date became more universally accepted, leading to the two separate celebrations we have today, Christmas and Epiphany. So, while the date of December 25th has become the traditional day for celebrating Christ's birth, it's clear that this wasn't the original or only date considered by early Christians. The choice of December 25th was influenced by a mix of theological reasoning and practical concerns, reflecting the complex and evolving nature of early Christian traditions. Throughout history, the birth of Jesus has been seen as a moment that changed everything, a divine intervention in the course of human history. Whether Jesus was born during Sukkot, in late September or early October, or another significant time, the timing itself is rich with meaning. The symbolism of God coming to dwell among his people, during a festival that celebrates God's presence, or aligning with the rebirth of light during the darkest time of the year, highlights the profound impact of Christ's arrival. Jesus' birth marks the beginning of a new era, a fulfillment of prophecy, and a promise of hope. The Gospel of John begins with the powerful declaration, "In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. The Word became flesh and made his dwelling among us," John 1 verses 1 and 14. This passage captures the essence of what Christ's birth signifies, God becoming flesh, dwelling among us, and bringing light into the darkness of the world. Understanding the timing of Christ's birth in this broader context helps us see the layers of meaning that would have resonated with the people of that time, and that continue to inspire believers today. The birth of Jesus wasn't just an event, it was a statement, a divine message that God is with us, no matter the circumstances, bringing hope, light, and salvation. So, as we reflect on the true date of Christ's birth, we recognize that it's more than just a historical inquiry. It's an invitation to delve deeper into the meaning of that miraculous moment, to appreciate the ways in which God's timing is always perfect, and to celebrate the birth of Jesus as the dawn of a new creation. Thank you for joining us on this journey to uncover the mysteries surrounding the birth of Christ. Your engagement and interest make this exploration meaningful, and we appreciate you staying with us until the end. If you found this video enlightening, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to stay updated with more thought-provoking content. May the peace and blessings of God be with you all. God bless us all.